The NCAA and its investigation into Michigan football has been all abuzz as of late, in part due to this very show, and it's reached the Buckeyes and all of that. I do have some updates, kind of. Not really updates, well, kind of. You can find out on the other side on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. So we're going to spend the first little while talking about the NCAA, and then I want to get into a little bit about this. CBS Sports came up with a blue chip ratio thing. I have some thoughts on that. So we will get to that in the end as far as it pertains Michigan and the potential 2024 national championship. So I have some clarifications in some ways. I have some congruences in others. So I spoke again to my source and when it comes to the NCAA investigation, but I also spoke to someone else who has been kind of knee deep in all of this. And the good news with all of this is that the person that I talked to who has also been digging on their end, they have come to similar conclusions as far as what the NCAA is going to be charging. I do want to take a moment to kind of interject, because I did say on the fort yesterday on Wolverine.com over on On3. What I am saying is not that I know what the charges are going to be in terms of what the penalty is. I do know what the charges are going to be as far as the line items, at least what they are supposed to be as of this juncture. Now, how do I know that? Because the NCAA has told multiple lawyers that are involved in the case of, representing whether it's Michigan or different entities within that they have interviewed and all of this. They have told them, here's where we're at. Now they are doing, they are in the drafting stage, which, as I said before, I believe, I don't really remember. That's the what I said, which is the benefit of a week having gone by, that you get the information somewhat refreshed, but that they were basically ready to go before board and whittle things down and all of that. So when I talked to this other person who had really good sources, it's someone that everyone trusts, they had said that this was, I said the number 8, which is what I've been consistent with. They have 8 charges. They said 7. When it came to what the bulk of the charges are, they said all the same stuff, and that it's mostly minor recruiting violations. Now, the reason why I have to have this caveat, and this is what I said on the fort, and what I've been kind of trying to explain to people, because I don't know exactly what the penalties will be. Now, I would say that based off of what I know, it seems extremely highly unlikely that the proverbial hammer is coming down, because it's a lot of really ticky-tack stuff, and it was kind of clearly the NCAA searching for problems that were not involving the original investigation, right? They were in search of a problem, essentially, right? You get to dig through the house and everything, and you try to figure things out from there and say, okay, what are we going to do? I do think that the NCAA obviously is going to have some kind of penalty, and it's going to try to do something in order to kind of save face with all of this. But when it comes to the Connor Stallion sign stealing stuff, maybe they find a way to amp things up. Because I also, speaking to my original person, said they had told me that, okay, I'm hearing that they are actually going to interview one more person in like 2 weeks, which kind of flies in the face of everything that I and my colleagues who have been kind of knee deep into this have heard. So I'm not sure if that's because they're, they're extending it or they're trying to just find something else. But again, based off of what they have found, they don't really have anything when it comes to the Connor Stallions stuff, from what I was told. Now, I am aware that there is, let's just call a spade, that Zach Smith's out there talking about me and the intel. The difference between Zach Smith and me here, and I didn't watch it. Thanks to those who sent it to me, I have no interest in watching anything that Zach Smith has to say about me or this program or anything like that. But knowing the tenor of it, the difference between him and me is I'm not on here telling you what I want to happen. I'm not on here telling you what I think should happen. I'm telling you what I am being told by those who know. Okay? And if you have a problem with that, you can deal with reality, right? I'm not wishful thinking here, and that's never been the case. I have always just told you what I know based off of what I have been told. Sometimes we speculate, and that's what we have done often on this show. Now, my biggest concern, if you were to ask me, and this is speculation, is that the NCAA did just pass something yesterday in which it changed some of the penalties, and not necessarily the penalties, but kind of more of the, we will show favoritism if you cooperate with us. Now, part of their cooperation is like turning over personal stuff. Now, you have to understand this about the NCAA. When the NCAA wants something from you, it's not just like, hey, like you would do in like a normal one-on-one, like maybe even with police officers or something like that, where they might like look at a very targeted time frame, the types of things where you would get warrants for. The NCAA wants you to turn over your personal email in perpetuity. So some haven't, some across the board have not cooperated, quote, cooperated, because there have been what I would say extreme overreaches and oversteps, right? Where they want, like, we want access to every text message you've ever sent in your life. We want access to every email you've ever sent in your life. And I know that they've asked that of Jim Harbaugh. I know they've asked that of Connor Stallions. And there's been some varying degrees of compliance when it comes to that from the many people that they've asked this of. And I don't know everyone that they have, but certainly it's a lot of people who are involved in this investigation that they have asked for, like, give us literally everything, and we will therefore then treat you differently and more leniently, which to me is very un-American, to be honest. And so I don't know if if there is some kind of something that happens with that, because they did literally just kind of change that rule. So if they can look at this investigation and say, well, they didn't give us all their phone records going back to 1983, therefore uncooperative cheaters and all of that, and therefore we're going to give you a little extra punishments for that. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with that, but I thought the timing of that was interesting. So we'll see. Let's continue talking about this whole deal, and then we will get into some thoughts on this blue chip ratio and how it affects Michigan's chances. I mean, it doesn't really affect Michigan's chances, but how it pertains to it. We'll do that in segment 3. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, there's nothing better than a nice hot summer day, sitting outside at the ballpark, sun's beating down on you. If you imbibe having a nice cold beer in your hands, that is summer. That's how, I mean, not with the beer, because I didn't drink when I was young, but that's how I remember growing up, being at Tiger Stadium, eventually Comerica Park in my young adulthood. And the way that you can make that happen now is through GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer to the first pitch, which is incredible. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. So if you want to go see the Detroit Tigers, if you're in town, you want to go see an actual real baseball team that plays actual Major League Baseball, you can do all of that through GameTime, and the best part is using that Seat View app. You know exactly what you're going to be looking at. exactly where you're going to be sitting. Don't be surprised when you get to the ballpark. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I'll tell you what, living here, what I now call the center of Fenton, my realtor, former Tennessee defensive tackle, Danny O'Brien, shot me a text yesterday and said, congratulations on your property value increase going through the roof, thanks to now being in the center of Fenton, Michigan, because the rail yard opened up and it is a constantly packed entertainment complex. It is very cool. I've eaten there a lot. They aren't paying for an ad. I'm just giving them one. Just don't park in front of my house. I like the things to be as quiet as possible because I have a puppy that likes to make a lot of noise and freak out anytime she sees anything because she thinks she thinks that's her job is just to bark at every little slight move of air outside. Anyway, but Michigan's becoming something. So it's pretty cool to live here. Anyway, so NCAA stuff. The way I look at what a lot of their stuff is overreach. But here's some of the good news, I guess, in a way. Good news, bad news. I don't know really how to quantify this. So last time I know I did say something about a staffer that was something of a turncoat and all of that. Now I was hearing that, and the way it was told to me was from people who had interviewed with the NCAA who had told me that the NCAA had told them directly, hey, well, they rolled over on you. And they were like, oh, man, that's disappointing. Now, I spoke to someone who spoke to that person directly, and they said that is not the case whatsoever. Like, not at all. So they were surprised. I was surprised. But obviously, we were able to deduce out of that while there is still a chance that that's true, and you know the person in question is lying to save face, there is also the possibility that the NCAA was trying to do the good cop bad cop routine in a way, right? Like, but just being bad cop, like, hey, this person said it, you know, hoping that the answers might change with that type of inducement. So what I make of that is that tells you a little bit about the NCAA if that is the case. But and I had heard this from one person who had corroborated it with another person who had interviewed. So I think that's interesting, but I think it should at least take some pressure off the idea of like there's someone to look at in their Michigan football tenure and say, hey, not cool. Now, there are certainly whistleblowers and such. They have their reasons and whatever. And we certainly aren't to the bottom of all of the things that have kind of contributed. And, you know, of course, we will get to more things as they get unveiled. I'm not going to unveil anything new that I necessarily know. I did, when talking to the other person, we both had the same curiosity about why no one's digging in on the Washington Post story. That's something we talked about all the way back in October about the contents within the Washington Post story, as far as I know, were not something that was ever proffered to either to the Washington Post or the NCAA, which brings us to a lot of the nefariousness of how did all of this get discovered, right? The Connor Stallions scheme, how did it get discovered? It does raise that into question. Now, in case you think I'm alluding to the Ohio State catapult stuff, which I'm sure is of pertinent interest to Mr. Zach Smith and all of that, I mean, I don't know. As far as I know, that trail's gone cold. I don't know that that'll ever be proven. The last we've kind of had with it was the Dan Wetzel article that came out while we were in Los Angeles for the Rose Bowl. I remember being on the bus back from practice, and he dropped this article saying, like, yeah, you know, the reason Alabama isn't using their iPads for film is not because of Michigan, and Michigan was also not using theirs as well. I know that was revealed by Rowan Wilson earlier that day as well, but That might be as far as we get with it. I'm not sure. And honestly, I would have no way of knowing beyond just kind of the conjecture and speculation, which, again, all of that stuff has never been, and I know that Buckeye fans get mad at me for all of this and Buckeye writers and whatever. None of this has been stuff that I've just kind of come up with out of thin air. This is stuff that has been told to me by an insane amount of people. But that doesn't mean that, and I know people have asked me what's going on with the Ohio State catapult stuff. I've gotten that question about 4 times this week. I don't know that you're ever going to get further along than where you're at. Someone's got to go on the record, and I don't know that anyone ever will. I just think that's unfortunately where it's at. So that's kind of where things stand when it comes to this whole thing. But I think it's good news to kind of see that everything that I said last week on the show pretty much all corroborated, except for the one piece, except for the amount of potential things that will end up being in the NOA when that does come out, and not 100% sure on the timeline as of right now. Obviously, we are a week down the road. Nothing has been delivered or anything like that. The one source I really wanted to connect with on this, I wasn't able to get a hold of. So this is kind of where we're at. But again, when it comes to me speculating about what might happen as far as the punishment, based off of the things that I've told you, based off of the things that I know that are that at least that was relayed by the NCAA to lawyers, unless there's some kind of significant change, like I can't see there being any massive punishment, because it's essentially mostly like level 2 and level 3 violations. And then the one Connor Stallions one, could they find a way to change it from based off of what it was to being a more serious violation? They're probably trying to figure that out, but they've been trying to figure that out since day one and had not, to my knowledge. But you have to ask yourself when it comes to all of this, the people who are telling you different things, right? Whether it's me, and you don't have to trust me if you don't want to. That's fine. I'm just telling you what I've been told. But whether it's me, whether it's an Ohio State person or whatever, ask yourself where they're getting their information, because it's a lot more feasible that I would have information from people who are close to Michigan than anyone on the Ohio State side would have when it comes to all of this, unless they just happen to know an NCAA investigator. And certainly there's always when you're trying to source things, there's always the chance that someone's lying to you. And that's the case here too. But even for me, the people that I'm talking to have no reason to do so, but it happens, right? Like I like to bring up how Kareem Walker himself, it told me like, yeah, the coaches are they said that I'm not going to redshirt. So I post that on 24/7 Sports Board. And the next day, a reporter asked Jim Harbaugh, what's the plan for Kareem Walker this year, 2016? He's like, oh, he's got a red shirt. Sometimes it happens. But as far as I know, all along this entire saga, we've had accurate info. I can't think of anything that's been completely amiss here. So anyway, that feels like a bit meandering. Let's get to the CBS Sports Blue Chip Ratio by Bud Elliott and why I think it's interesting. We will do that here in just a moment. But before we do Passion, Drive, and Patience, the formula for winning championships, rather, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with the eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I don't know what was going on with me in that last ad read. I was either talking in cursive or having a stroke. I'm not really sure what. I'm not on any medication at all. I actually quit my medication for 2 days because I think that was making me not feel good. So don't know what that was. I felt like talking in cursive is probably more likely. Anyhow, Bud Elliott put together his blue chip ratio, kind of evaluating. See, you can hear the dog barking. That's the damage of the rail yard and traffic. He put out this blue chip ratio, which is looking at the 16 teams that realistically have a chance to win a national title based off of the kind of recruiting talent they have. Ohio State's number 1 at 90%. Michigan is 15th at 56%. Oh no, 15th. I don't know where Michigan ranked itself, but it says right in the last year, but it says right in the article, Michigan, which won it all last year, had 54%. So they're 2% higher with the blue chip ratio than they were before. So why does that matter, or if it matters at all? Well, recruiting being the lifeblood of any program, that's just always true. Stars do matter. But I think there's a lot of different things that matter. We've talked about this a lot, but stars matter. I don't think recruiting is the be all end all. Otherwise, the team that's number 1 in any given class is going to be within 3 or 4 years the national champion. It sometimes works out that way, but it didn't. Georgia was the number 1 class often in the mid 2000s, and it took until 2021 before they won it. Right? There's been a couple times where, I mean, I don't want to go and look. That's just, I feel like it is what it is. But there's been a lot of times where you've seen the number 1 class not be there, right? Texas A&M, I guess, would be in that year 2 or 3 or whatever after being the number 1 class and is nowhere close at this point. And maybe Mike Elko gets them going. So it's a factor. Development is also obviously a factor, and we've seen that because you can't tell me Mikey Sainristil is not a 5-star, but yet he was a 3-star, and he kind of looked like a 3-star for most of his career until he was moved back to defense, and suddenly he looked like a 5-star, right? Michigan's had its 5 stars. Donovan Edwards was a 5-star on 24/7 Sports Proprietary. Will Johnson was a 5-star. They've had high 4 stars like Colston Loveland. JJ McCarthy, some sites had him as a 5, some had him as a 4. Blake Horn was a high-end 4-star. But it doesn't account for everything, right? Hassan Haskins was a 3-star. Aiden Hutchinson was these two didn't win championships, but Aiden Hutchinson was a 4-star, kind of, like a, mid-high, right? He wasn't like I think he was outside the top 100, and yet he ended up being number 2 in the draft. So it takes a little bit more, right, than just that. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were mid 4 stars, I believe. Mason, I think, ended up being like a top 247 guy, 24/7 rather. And then Kenneth Grant was kind of like a 4-star 300. Memory serves. But they outperformed their rankings. So that's part of it. That's the development piece, the coaching piece, making smart decisions as a coaching staff on top of the development, right? Because that can win and lose you some games as well. And ultimately, the one big thing that I think this last year points to isn't just the blue chips, right? Because, the people who had big plays, a lot of them, JJ, Colston, Mason, Kenneth, Will Johnson, Donovan Edwards, high-end guys. But then a Mikey Sanders still seals the game, right? Part of it is culture. Part of it is coaching acumen and culture. And Michigan, we don't know about coaching acumen as far as this group is because it has to be cohesive. Because when I think back to 2017, they had a lot of guys that could coach, right? Tim Drevno, I know we didn't really part on good terms with Tim Drevno. But at the same time, he had a great coaching acumen, really kind of up till that point. But Greg Fry had a really good coaching acumen. They had Pep Hamilton, who had a really good coaching acumen. It just kind of felt like there were a bunch of guys there without a rhyme and a reason. You know what I mean? Whereas the last 3 years, it feels like everyone was in their place as a coach with a rhyme and a reason. It feels like, we'll find out more, but it feels like Sharon assembled this staff with a rhyme and a reason. The culture still seems to be intact, and that's one of the things that he talked about on Monday at the golf outing was the importance of everyone pulling in the same direction. I think any organization benefits from this kind of selfless, like, this is what we need to do and this is how we're going to do it type of mentality. And not everyone wants to win a championship. I mean, you can look at like an Ohio State and say, yeah, they want to win a championship. Look at all the things they did. That doesn't mean that every single person has their main thing. Some guys might be in the new NIL. I'm not saying that this is what Ohio State is. I'm just using them as an example. But like, some guys might want to just get paid. Some guy just might want to be like, hey, Ohio State sends guys to the first round of the league. That's what I want. Whereas a lot of Michigan people that have come through this program in the last 3 years, they're like, you know what? I'll sacrifice millions of dollars in pursuit of greatness. Roman Wilson could have gone to an Air Raid or an Alabama type or something like that, and probably been a first round type of draft pick, right? He would have been utilized much more heavily, but he wasn't, and he had no problem with that. So he wasn't like first round type. Maybe he wouldn't have been that anyway. But instead of being a first round type, maybe he's going to be a second round type, but instead he's a third. So getting everyone kind of on an expectation, an organizational, and just even camaraderie standpoint, that counts for a lot. That's why you see a team with a 54% blue chip ratio win a national championship. And that's good, right? Like, because it means that, yeah, you have talent, but it also means development. It also means everyone pulling in the same direction. And I just don't think that when you look at the EA Sports stuff coming out, Michigan number 7 defense, all that kind of stuff, like, that's the type of thing that a video game isn't going to be able to assess. That's the type of thing that PFF isn't going to be able to assess, is how together are they in the locker room? How accountable are they to each other? How cohesive is the plan? Is the complementary football? All of these different things. There are things that are just intangible, and those are important. So Michigan's actually increased by 2%. They figure out that quarterback position, there's a really good shot. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back either Friday or Saturday. And Monday, look forward, we're going to have Max Shadwick from PFF as a guest. So that is something to even look forward to, July 1st. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.